Good day, grade 8 learners. Welcome to the Natural Sciences lesson. My name is Tebile Tebe, and this program is proudly brought to you by the Houghton Department of Education. Our knowledge area is life and living, and our topic for today is interactions and interdependence within an environment. And our subtopic, we're going to be focusing on the conservation of the ecosystem. Let's check our lesson objectives. Remember, we need to aim at achieving something. What is it that we are going to achieve by the end of this lesson? First objective is we're going to explain the importance of maintaining biodiversity. We're going to explain the importance of maintaining biodiversity. And we are also going to describe the sustainable use of natural resources. And we get all this from the CAPS document, page 38. Let's look at pre-knowledge. When we are talking about pre-knowledge, this is the knowledge that we already have. This is prior knowledge. This is what we have learned in the previous grades. What is it that we have learned in the previous grades? Remember, when you're in grade 5 and 6, you did the concept of an ecosystem and fitting relationships. And then in grade 8, we've already covered ecosystems, even the fitting relationships. And last lesson, we're doing adaptations. You still remember adaptations. The change, the gradual change that happens over time. That's what we were focusing on. This is the foundation of today's lesson. All right. Our lesson is going to build up from this one. In order for you and me to remember what we did in the past, let's write this baseline activity. I'll just give you 3 minutes to write it. But let's check the questions together first. Question number 1 says, give an example of a predator and describe how it adapts by being a good predator. And then question number 2, describe the adaptations shared by camels and polar bears. I'll give you 3 minutes. Please write this exercise. Well, grade 8, you have written the answers. Let's check the solutions together. First of all, question number 1 says, give an example of a predator and describe how it adapts by being a good predator. And then 2, describe the adaptations shared by camels and polar bears. Okay, let's check our solutions. If we're talking about predators, remember in our food chain, we've got the producers, we've got the herbivores, we've got the omnivores, then the carnivores. And then within the carnivores, we've got the predators. These are the animals that hunt for their prey. And then we also have the scavengers. These are the animals that will look for dead animals. And then we've got insectivores. These are organisms that feed on insects and small invertebrates, like the chameleon. But now we are focusing on the predators. We've got sharks. Sharks are predators. They are carnivores. Do you get that? And then sharks have got a good sense of smell, right? And they can sense movement in water. And they can swim very fast because of their streamlined bodies. That's a predator. Okay. And then question number 2 says, describe the adaptations shared by camels and polar bears. Let's look at the camel. They've got wide feet, and then they spread their load on the desert sand. Remember, it is very difficult to walk on desert sand, but the feet of the camels make it possible for it to spread on the load and then walk on the sand. And then they also have long eyelashes, hair-lined nostrils. Why? Because if they close them, the dust and the sand won't get into their eyes and into their nose. All right, that is adaptation. Do you get it? For example, if an animal lives in a certain place with a certain climatic condition, it has to adapt to that environment, because if it doesn't adapt, it will die because it is not able to adapt. But it has to adapt. And then let's look at polar bears. Polar bears live in what? In snowy areas, in very cold conditions. And then they've got fur to keep them warm. Do you get it? All right. Polar bears have large paws to spread their load on the ice and snow. Remember, it is very difficult to walk on ice and snow. And then the feet of the polar bears make it possible for it to spread its load and walk on snow and ice. And camels and polar bears have small ears. They both have small ears. Okay. And then let's go to an interesting part. We need to define terms. This is very important because as it is grade 8, when you're writing your exam, you're going to come across the definition of terms. You should be able to define these terms. You'll be defining these terms from now grade 8 up to grade 12. And then defining a term carries about 2 marks. And let's make use of those marks. To us, they must be 3 marks. All right, let's concentrate and understand this. We've got conservation. What is the meaning of conservation? Conservation is the sustainable use of resources. When we are talking about conservation, this is a sustainable way of using our natural resources. It is protecting them. It is managing them. All right? And then sustainable, keeping an ecological balance by not using up the resources. Remember, we should not use up our natural resources so that future generations will also enjoy them. They will also see them. All right. And then we've got biodiversity. What does the word biodiversity mean? This is the total variety of species in an area. This is biodiversity. And then monoculture. When we are looking at monoculture, mono means what, grade 8? Mono means one. Therefore, if we say monoculture, This is a single crop species that has been farmed over a large area of land. Right. For example, if you visit a farm, you'll see monoculture, a single crop species farmed on a large area. For example, it can be potatoes, it can be maize, it can be any plant that you can think of. All right, let's check the picture then. We've got a picture here. It shows us what? Monoculture. This is a single crop species. If you check, this is a single crop species, the whole picture, on a very large area. Okay. And then we've got alien species. When we are talking about alien species, these are not indigenous to an area, but they've been taken from another area, from foreign land to another area. That is alien species. Do you get it? And then the principles of conservation. Ecosystems are homes to biodiversity and provide with natural resources. Okay. And then let's check this poster here. It shows us ecosystems, different ecosystems. Remember, we've got marine life. This is marine life. And then even here, and then we've got those species that live in snowy areas. We can see polar bears. Even those who live in grasslands, you can get them here. Marine life is here. It's very interesting. Even the birds, even the desert life, the equatorial rainforest, even these are coral reefs, and then the estuaries as well. Okay, this is interesting. All this is biodiversity. All right, these are different ecosystems. Do you get it? And it is very important to preserve them, to conserve them, so that the species will be able to live, and then the food chains will be there. Okay, but if we destroy the food chains, then the ecosystem can be destroyed because of that. Okay. And then we've got water that is very precious to us, and minerals and food, and even recreation. Okay. And then conservation is about sharing ecosystem resources fairly and sustainable, so that they are available for future generations. Future generations have to come across these resources and enjoy them as we are enjoying them. For example, let's look at Addo Elephant National Park. If Addo Elephant National Park wasn't put in place, we wouldn't be having the elephants that we are seeing now. They will be extinct. They will be like dinosaurs. Where are the dinosaurs? They are extinct. They are no longer living. They are no longer existing. They've vanished. All right. Therefore, there are animals that are in the red data list that we are trying to protect. We are trying to manage. We are preserving. We are conserving. That's why we have national parks. For example, we've got Kruger National Park. It has got the big five. All right. And then there is a lot of poaching there. Like the rhinos. Rhinos are in the red data list. Why? Because poachers want to kill the rhino. Remember, poaching means what? Killing animals illegally. Why? Because they want to sell the horn of a rhino. Therefore, it is in the red data list. We are doing everything to protect it. All right. Therefore, that's why we've got national parks. It is a way of conserving. It is a way of protecting. It is a way of managing these animals. Do you get it? Let's move on. So that the future generations will also see the animals that we have now. Okay. Conservation may also mean not harming the ecosystem and damaging the habitat, therefore protecting and managing our biodiversity. All right. We are managing our natural resources. We are managing our species. Okay. Natural ecosystems carries out many important processes such as regulating the atmosphere and the climate, that is temperature and even rainfall, and filtering and cleaning and retaining water, informing and improving the quality of the soil. Right. How do we improve the quality of the soil in a green way? We improve the quality of the soil because the decomposers act on dead matter. They act on dead plants and act on dead animals, retaining the nutrients back into the soil. Remember, the earth needs nutrients. All right? Why does the soil need nutrients? So that the plants will grow and flourish. Okay, they need nutrients. Therefore, the decomposers recycle the nutrients back into the soil. Do you get it? And what are these decomposers? You still remember decomposers, don't you? When we are talking about decomposers, we are talking about fungi, we are talking about bacteria. These are some of the decomposers, even mold. These are the decomposers. They act on dead matter. Okay. And then let's move on. And then conservation, we also provide homes to pollinators of plants, including those that provide us with food. For example, we've got bees. Look at these bees. Let's look at this picture, grade 8. We've got a nice yellow flower and we've got a lot of bees. What are these bees doing? They're collecting nectar and they are pollinating. All right. And then they collect nectar and make what? And make honey. All right. Honey is food to us. It is used for medicinal use and we eat it. It is very healthy. Do you get it? That's why we need to protect our natural resources. Just imagine if we didn't have these flowers. If we've cut these flowers, where will we get the honey from? What were the bees going to collect? Therefore, we should be very responsible. Do you get that? And then let's move on. And then let's recycle. For example, recycling of waste. The decomposers recycle the waste. How? Because they act on dead matter and recycle the nutrients back into the soil. And those nutrients are going to make the plants grow because the plant needs nutrients as well. Do you get it? As we need nutrients. And then production of wood, food, and fuel. All right. At times we produce food, fuel, and even cut wood for different purposes. For example, we make furniture. At times, it is very important to replace what we have damaged. For example, if you cut one tree, you plant how many? You plant 2. All right. You remember the Apple Day, grade 8, don't you? That's good. So let's make sure we use our resources sparingly. We don't overuse them. Okay. Many ecosystems are destroyed as a result of human activities. Human activities at times destroy the ecosystem. What do we mean if we say destroying the ecosystem as a result of human activities? Humans at times destroy the ecosystem. For example, if you burn a forest, you are destroying the ecosystem. Why? Because the fire is going to burn the vegetation. It will also kill the species that are living in that forest. And then there are a lot of organisms that survive, that depend on the forest. But if it is burned, they won't have a home. They won't have food. Right. Let's put all that into consideration. And then human populations continue to increase. We continue to increase because we are reproducing. Okay. And then the earth resources are being used up. That's why we need to conserve, we need to protect, we need to manage our resources. That's why we've got national parks. Because if there were not national parks, most animals will be extinct by now. Because people will kill the animals for medicinal use, even for food. All right. Remember, we are omnivores. We depend on plants and also on animals, that is meat. As ecosystems are lost, species become extinct. You still remember what extinct means. If we're saying the species become extinct, the species will no longer be there. It will no longer be there. It will be extinct. Do you get it? This means that biodiversity decreases. Biodiversity will decrease because some species will become extinct and then upsetting the balance in the ecosystem. The ecosystem won't be balanced. Why? Because some of the species will be extinct. It will no longer be existing. Okay. And then still on human activities, activities that cause extinction and reduce biodiversity are many. There are a lot. All right. And then what should we do? We should be replacing these natural habitats that are usually quite diverse with monocultures of single crop species planted over large areas. At times we clear the forest, we clear the land and start farming. All right? And then practice monoculture. It disturbs the biodiversity. It disturbs the ecosystem. All right? Because if we cut down the forest and make farms, what is it that we have disturbed? We have disturbed a lot of species because there were a lot of organisms that were depending on the forest. But now we've got monoculture. We've got a single crop species. Therefore, some organisms cannot live in that monoculture because they are dependent on the forest. Do you get that? That is very bad. Replacing natural habitats by farms. And at times we replace it by what? Building cities, even building what? Different infrastructure. It disturbs the natural ecosystem. For example, we've got botanical gardens. What are botanical gardens for? Botanical gardens are there so that we protect, we manage, we conserve the diverse species of plants. Okay. Rather than having monoculture. Because having monoculture, we are having a single crop species like this picture here. But if it is natural and indigenous, then a lot of species thrive. That is, they live, they enjoy in that habitat. Okay. Let's move on. And then at times we overharvest plants and even animals. For example, when fishing in the rivers or even oceans, we tend to overfish. Why? Because of greed. We overfish, we overharvest the fish so that we sell them and have money, which is not good for the ecosystem because the ecosystem won't be balanced. Just imagine if you see this poster. Let's look at these fish. Check how many they are. There are quite many. And then these fishermen are just fishing. They don't care which size they are catching. Even the small ones, they just fish them. Even the big ones, they just fish them. They don't care about the reproduction. Therefore, we should make sure that we control, we manage, we preserve and conserve our ecosystem. We manage our ecosystems and preserve our natural resources. Okay. And then using pesticides kill animals that cause diseases such as mosquitoes and rats and eat our store grain. We kill these species by pesticide, and then the pesticides are being washed down by the rain to the rivers. Then what do they do to marine life? They kill those animals, they kill those species, they kill the fish in the rivers. Then they are washed down to the oceans. What happens to the marine life? It dies because of these pesticides. Do you get it? So we should control, we should not use these chemicals. Okay. And then activities that cause extinction and reduce biodiversity include pollinating the environment with what? With gas emissions from cars and factories. That's why we've got this big carbon footprint. Okay. If we've got a big carbon footprint, what's going to happen? We're going to experience acid rain. It is not healthy. It kills our animals and it is not good for our health. Do you get it? Therefore, we should go green. Okay? What do I mean if I say we should go green? Remember, when you go to the shops, you take a green bag to buy your groceries. Okay? That green bag is recycled material. But at times we buy plastic. Plastic litters our land. It kills our animals. And it is washed down to the rivers, into the oceans, and kills our marine life. Therefore, we should go green. We should not pollute our areas. Okay. And then we've got factories that are emitting a lot of fumes and they are polluting the air. And then introducing exotic alien species that compete for resources with the indigenous plants and animals. It is also a problem. Remember the alien species. How are we going to get rid of it? Because if we bring alien species like plants from other countries, then how are we going to control them? They will grow uncontrollable because they don't have a natural enemy. When we bring those plants, we don't bring the species that feed on those plants. Do you get it? At times we take these plants from countries like the countries in the southern part of South America and Australia and even New Zealand, because we are in the southern hemisphere. We've got the same climatic conditions, but these exotic alien plants are a problem. They will end up invading the habitat, okay, because our very own indigenous plants have got natural enemies. There are species that feed on them, but the alien species don't have enemies. Therefore, it becomes expensive to eradicate them if they grow out of proportion. All right, let's move on. Look at these species. We've got quite a number of different species. And then make sure you ask us questions if there is something that you didn't understand. Grade 8. Our number is 082 760 2630. Our number again, 082 760 2630. All right, let's look at controlling alien vegetation, because we need to control it, because if we don't control it, it will invade our indigenous plants and it won't be good. All right, plants from places such as Australia and South America were introduced to South Africa for use as windbreaks, fuel, and sometimes as decorative garden plants. Okay, we bring these alien species for different reasons. We bring them for different purposes. All right. And then, since these plants came from areas that have a similar climate to that of South Africa, they are already adapted to the conditions here. Therefore, they will grow and thrive. But the problem is that they don't have the natural enemies. Okay. These plants spread successfully because here in South Africa, they have no natural animal enemies to keep them in check. There are no animals that will be feeding on them. Do you get it? Therefore, our species will go hungry. Why? Because these alien species have invaded the land, and then there are no species that feed on them, and then they'll grow uncontrollable. Okay. And then we've got cactus there, a prickly pear. Look at it, and then let's check the camel. Camel feeds on indigenous plants. It lives in the desert, therefore it is built in such a way that it can feed on what? On thorns, but it can't feed on alien species because it doesn't know it. Do you get it? And then as a result, their populations increase rapidly and therefore outcompete indigenous vegetation and rapidly take over an area, which is a cause for concern. It is not easy to eradicate alien vegetation, grade 8, but control methods have been introduced. We've got control methods because if we don't have these control methods, these alien vegetations will take over. Okay, for example, the biological control. Living things are used to control the population of pests. These are living organisms. The natural enemy of the plant, pests such as insect or fungi, is introduced from its native country and used to control the alien plant. Right. If we get a plant from Brazil, therefore we need to have the species that feeds on that alien plant and introduce it to our ecosystem so that it can feed on that alien plant. You see, it's becoming expensive now because we have already took a plant from them and then we need to go and get the species that will feed on them. And then these plants are going to invade and take over from the indigenous plant, which is a cause for concern. And then we've got chemical control. At times we control these alien species using chemicals. And what happens with these chemicals? They are washed down by the rains into the rivers and washed down into the oceans. And then a lot of ecosystem is upset, it's not balanced. Why? Because these chemicals are going to destroy marine life. And it is very expensive to use chemical control because over a certain period, we need to buy these chemicals, we need to spray these alien species so that they die. But over time, they will recur again. Okay. And then if we spray these chemical poison into alien plants, this method is very expensive, grade 8. And at times it will be repeated almost every year. It can also harm the environment and the poison can enter our ecosystem, destroying, making our ecosystem not to balance. Okay, it will be imbalanced. And then we've got another method, that is mechanical method. It is another way that we use to control the alien species. Okay, this is also expensive and involves burning and cutting down or even uprooting alien plants. It is time consuming and it is expensive. Do you get it? It also needs to be repeated every year as young seedlings germinate. Okay. And then invasive alien plants are controlled successfully when a combination of these three methods are used. But it becomes expensive as well. And then alien plants are used for firewood and to make furniture. Household objects is another method of controlling alien vegetation from which people can earn a living. For example, if you've got alien plants, for example, trees, you can cut them and make different types of furniture, and then people can earn a living. Do you get it? For example, we've got this alien species here. We've got this these logs, and then we make what? Furniture. Okay, then people will earn a living. Then it is a positive way rather than cutting our indigenous plants, which take years to grow. Do you get that? And then we've got an activity grade 8, which I want us to write. Okay, I'll just give you a minute to write this one. Define biodiversity and explain why it is important to maintain it. Define it and then explain why it is important to maintain it. I'll just give you a minute. Let's start writing. All right, let's check our question again and then the solutions. Define biodiversity and explain why it is important to maintain it. All right, if we are looking at biodiversity, we are looking at the total species in an area. And then it is very important to maintain biodiversity because ecosystem will be unbalanced if we don't maintain it, because the ecosystem needs to be balanced. Do you get it? Good. Let's move on. And then protecting and managing ecosystem. We need to protect ecosystem. We need to manage ecosystem. For example, if we are protecting and managing ecosystem, we can put in place national parks, Transfrontier parks. We've got Kruger National Park. We are protecting the animals. All right. We are conserving the animals. Even Kgalagadi Transfrontier Park, we are protecting and preserving and even managing the animal species. Even if we've got poachers, there are measures that have been put in place to get rid of poachers, because we've got a lot of animals that are on the red data list. For example, the rhinos. A lot of poachers would kill rhinos so that they will sell the horns, which is very unfair. All right. Therefore, we've got national parks that control that. And then we also have botanical gardens. All right. These botanical gardens are preserving, conserving, and managing these natural or indigenous plants so that people won't cut them. For example, we've got Cape Floral Kingdom. Cape Floral Kingdom is in Eastern Cape, and then we've got 7 kingdoms. These are indigenous flowers. Therefore, it is a heritage site. It is a World Heritage Site. We are protecting, we are preserving, we are managing our natural resources. We also have Richtersveld Botanical Landscape in the Northern Cape. We are also preserving and protecting the species. All right. And then we've got different national parks where we are protecting, conserving our animals. We've got Addo Elephant National Park. If we didn't have Addo Elephant National Park, we wouldn't even be having elephants by now. because elephants were being killed, elephants were being hunted down, they were abused, and they became aggressive in return. And then when there was a park, Addo Elephant National Park, then they were being calmed down by citrus fruits. That's why we say, if you go to national parks, don't feed the animals. All right. And then we protect the ecosystem. How? By protecting the habitat first. And then this is the purpose of national parks. For example, we've got Kruger National Park, we've got nature reserves and zoo lakes. And then once a habitat is protected, conservationists make sure that it stays healthy. Even if we are protecting these animals and managing the national parks, we must make sure that they are healthy. Do you get it? Good. And then let's move on. And we're setting aside large areas of land in areas that are rich in biodiversity is important for ecosystem conservation. All right. This is very important. Okay. For example, the creation of the Kgalagadi Transfrontier Park, which is 3.6 million hectares, means that large areas can be managed in an ecological sound way. All right. Kgalagadi Transfrontier Park is very big. It is huge. All right. It has about 3.6 million hectares, and we are managing the ecosystem. Okay. That is very good. Let's check these animals. We've got elephants. We've got a population of elephants. They are thriving. They are reproducing. They are healthy in their environment. Okay. And then we also have botanical gardens. We are preserving, we are conserving, we are managing these species. All right. This is how it should be. Then the earth is healthy. And then legislation can also be used to stop these activities. All right. Legislation can stop poaching, and they can stop collecting wild plants and clearing land. Because at times we poach, then animals near extinct. They become extinct because of poaching. Therefore, we should get rid of these poachers. We should put in place measures that these poachers will be jailed and sentenced. Okay. And then even collecting wild plants. At times people collect a lot, they overharvest these wild plants. Then the ecosystem won't be balanced. And even clearing of land. People cut down trees and they don't replace them. And then what about the species that is supposed to live in that land? It will be disturbed. The ecosystem will be disturbed. Okay. At times we clear the land so that we farm. Okay. And then we are disturbing the ecosystem. However, it is often difficult to enforce such legislation. Okay. At times it is very difficult. That's why in Kruger National Park, you come across the rhinos that have been killed by the poachers. But we are doing everything. The government is doing everything in its power to cap this, to stop this. All right. Protecting and managing ecosystems. We've got wetlands. When we are talking about wetlands, we are talking about the what? The marshes. Okay. We are talking about the swamps. All right. For example, we've got Isimangaliso Wetland Park at the mouth of the sea in the coastal region of KZN. Okay. It has got diverse species. It is a wonder. Why? Because it has got freshwater species and also seawater species. Okay, but you can't see the demarcation line on the water. Because the freshwater species, you come across crocodiles, you come across hippos, but in the seawater species, you come across the species that live in the seas. Okay. And then wetlands are waterlogged areas that are important habitats for water-loving plants and many animals, particularly water birds. All right, we've got quite a number of species that thrive, that live in wetlands. For example, we've got water birds. They live in swampy areas. They live in these wetlands. And these wetlands act as sponges. Okay? They also control the floods. Okay? Let's move on. Like sponges, wetlands hold water. This means they are natural stores of water and good for flood control. They control the floods because they are wetlands. They act like sponges. They will hold the water. Okay. And then Working for Wetlands is a project in our country that aims to look after and restore damaged wetlands. We restore damaged wetlands. And then these are the wetlands that we have. We've got swamps, we've got marshes. All these are wetlands that we have on earth. And then every person can be involved in conservation. And then materials such as plastic, paper, glass, metal can be recycled because they bring an imbalance in the ecosystem. If it is littered on land or if it is bent, it destroys the ecosystem. It makes the ecosystem unbalanced. Therefore, we should reduce waste. If we say reduce waste, do you understand what we're talking about? When you reduce waste, you don't buy a lot of plastics. You don't buy a lot of bottles. For example, you can reduce waste by buying one bottle of water. If you drink the water, don't throw away that plastic bottle. Refill it for some days. Then you can throw it away when it is worn out. Okay, and don't just throw it away anyway. You put it in recycling bins. Okay, we've got recycling bins marked paper, plastic, bottles, metal. All these will be taken for what? For recycling. Okay, in our schools we've got these bins. Make sure you don't just throw away litter. Check the bin that has been labeled plastic and throw it there. Then it will be recycled. Okay. And then municipalities can also set up collection points of different materials that can be taken to depots for recycling, like in our schools. We call them, they come and collect these bins. Then we recycle. Okay. And then organic waste can be collected in gardens and used to make compost. What is compost? This is manure. Okay? It makes our land fertile. It recycles nutrients. For example, we've got decomposers. Decomposers will act on dead matter and then recycle the nutrients back into the soil. And then if we make compost, compost is manure. It is rich in nutrients. Then we add to the soil. Then our soil will be fertile. It will have nutrients that the plants need so that they grow and give us what? Food. Do you get it? Good. And then everyone can be and should also contribute to conservation. All right, we should all be included, or we should all participate in conservation. We are all responsible for ensuring sustainable use of natural resources so that future generations will also enjoy them as we are enjoying them. And then, for example, let's reduce waste. Okay, let's make sure if we go to the bathroom, let's close the taps, grade 8. And when you are drinking water, make sure you have closed the tap. Let's conserve the water that we have. And now we are in class. Let's switch off the lights. We'll be saving energy. All right. And then even the plugs, let's switch them off. Let's not just switch lights even if we don't need them. Okay, let's switch them off. Then we are saving energy. And then let's reduce. What are we reducing? We are reducing waste. Let's stop buying plastic from supermarkets. Let's put our groceries in green bags. That is reducing. Let's not just throw away the plastic bottles. Let's reuse them. All right? When we no longer need them, let's put them in recycled bins. Then they'll be recycled. Okay? Let's not litter our land. And then reuse. We reuse different types of containers. You can maybe make a pot plant something in your plastic bottle, and then recycle. After you've used it and you feel you no longer need it, let's recycle. Okay, and then we'll have a what? A happier earth. I love this picture. We'll have a happy earth. Let's be responsible consumers. Grade 8. Think about the cost of the environment, of the things you buy and food we eat. We eat a lot of food, and some of these food are wrapped in plastics, which are not good for our environment. And using resources so that they are not depleted. Let's use them in such a way that they are not depleted. For example, let's not just cut trees. Let's not just deforestate an area. Let us reforestate. You cut a tree, you plant how many? 2. That's good. For example, when collecting bark from trees or fishing in wetlands, only a certain quantity of the resources should be taken. Let's not just fish and fish for the love of fishing. Let's not overfish. Okay. Enough of the resources need to remain so that the population can regrow and provide resources the following season or the following year. Let's avoid cutting a lot of trees. Let's avoid overfishing. All right. I'll give you an activity, grade 8. I will just give you 2 minutes to write this activity. Question number 1 says, what do you think will happen if the natural resource is not used in a sustainable way? 2, in which way can individuals contribute to conservation? 3 minutes, let's start writing. Good, grade 8. Let's check the questions together and the solutions. Remember to send us a picture of your answers to 082 760 2630. 082 760 2630. Make sure you ask questions. We've got an amazing team behind the scenes who are going to answer all your questions. All right, let's look at question number 1. It says, what do you think will happen if the natural resources is not used in a sustainable way? And then 2, in which way can individuals contribute to conservation? What will happen if we don't use our natural resources in a sustainable way? What do you think will happen? The ecosystem will become unbalanced because different living organisms depend on each other. And then the natural resources will become extinct. It won't be there. Okay. Then it can run out. For example, some living organisms will also become extinct because of an unbalanced ecosystem. Okay. Then let's check for solution for question number 2. In which way can individuals contribute to conservation? We can save water. Make sure you close the tap when you go to the bathroom. Make sure you reduce energy consumption. Make sure the lights are off in our classroom because it's during the day. We've got sunlight today. Let's switch off the lights. Let's save energy. Okay. And then let's be a responsible consumer. When we go and buy groceries from shop, let's not buy plastic. Let's not buy plastic, but let's use what? Green bags. Do you get it? And then let's practice the 3 R's. That is reduce, reuse, and recycle. Let's reduce the waste. Let's reuse the containers. And let's recycle them. Okay. And then let's summarize our lesson. Let's look at conservation. Ecosystems are homes to biodiversity and provide us with what? They provide with natural resources such as what? Water, minerals, food, and even recreation. Okay. And then the natural ecosystem carries out many important processes. Okay, we've got the indigenous plants. We've got different plants, indigenous plants, and then let's conserve them so that ecosystem will be balanced. For example, we've got the Cape Flora region. We are conserving the natural species. We are protecting, we are managing the natural species. But we've got alien plants in the other hand, which are invading our land. Why? Because it grows uncontrollable, it doesn't have biological enemies, and it is very difficult to eradicate it. It can either be chemically or mechanically. It is expensive. Do you get it? And then even the human activities are contributing to this. And then let's protect the ecosystem. It begins with protecting each habitat. Do you get it? Let's protect our earth. All right, let's look at these 2 pictures. This is a boy hugging the earth. This is a happy earth. Okay? Let's make sure we protect it. Let's make sure we've got balanced ecosystems. Okay? We've got our wetlands. Let's protect them. Okay? The wetlands are making us have a lot of water because they are act-like sponges. They also control the floods. And they are the sources of our aquifers. The water will be absorbed into the earth, then we'll have an aquifer. By the way, do you still remember what an aquifer is, grade 8? We've got a huge lake underground. We call that an aquifer. Okay. That's our summary for our lesson. Okay. And then please make sure we reduce, you reuse, you recycle, then we'll be having a happy earth. What are we reducing? We are reducing waste. Let's not litter. Let's put the litter in the appropriate bins. We've got marked bins for the papers, for the plastic, for the bottles, even for the metals. Let's place litter in the appropriate bins so that we can recycle them. Okay. And then reuse some of the containers which you can reuse, and then recycle. Then we'll have a happy earth. And let's save energy. Let's always save energy. And in our WhatsApp today, there's no one who asked a question. Make sure you ask questions. We'll answer your questions. And then the brief preview of the next lesson. In our next lesson, we'll be looking at different types of microorganisms and harmful microorganisms. Thank you very much, grade 8. Make sure you always sanitize, maintain social distance, and always wear a mask. So long for now.